Welcome back to the Deerskin Diary. Today we're taking a look at something modest yet deeply profound, Daniel Boone's luggage. If this simple deerskin bag carried clothing for he and Rebecca on their way back to the Yadkin Valley in 1788. We're going to look at it through the lens of Peter Houston, who traveled with Boone on one of his largest migration routes west in 1788. And we're going to take a look at what this bag tells us about frontier life and ambition and even a world in motion. So stick around. This episode will become dear to you as we see just how much we can pack into it. Daniel Boone is no stranger to this channel and probably not a stranger to you. He's the figurehead of colonial westward movement and of America's first Far West. In the fall of 1779, Boone was 45 years old. He was living back in the Yadkin Valley of North Carolina. From there, he led a large party westward into Kentucky, including 18-year-old Peter Houston, who later became a close friend of Boone's. And in a surprise that could only happen during that time period in American history, Daniel Boone led not only 18-year-old Peter Houston, but also, according to family lore, Abraham Lincoln the Elder, who went on to become the grandfather of our nation's 16th president. Houston remained lifelong friends with Boone, and thankfully for us, he also became a prolific writer. And he's one of these writers that writes down the details that material culture enthusiasts like myself like to see later on. Now, frontier historian and author Ted Franklin Ballou actually took Houston's writing and edited them into this book, a sketch of the life and character of Daniel Boone, a memoir by Peter Houston. Houston's work provides vivid detail of camp life, clothing, and experiences that he shared with Boone. And one such item was a deerskin satchel, and it's mentioned almost in passing as he describes Daniel, Rebecca, and Nathan Boone in 1788. Houston described the scene as, quote, "They had 2 horses. Rebecca and her son rode one, and on her saddle there were 2 buffalo rugs, and hanging on the horn of her saddle was a deerskin satchel filled with wearing apparel. Whilst Boone also had 2 buffalo rugs on his saddle, and his gun on his shoulder and his shot pouch around his neck." When I read that passage, I got stuck on it, and here's why. That simple deerskin bag in this period of vast westward migration where people traveled on foot, on horseback, or perhaps with a small wagon says a lot about someone's social status, income level, ambition, and comfort in terms of what they pack into that bag and how they carry it. Now, today we're going to focus on that deerskin satchel as a way to try to understand something about a frontier mindset. All right, let's make this thing, or what I think this thing would have looked like at least. All we need for materials are deerskin, some linen thread, a needle, some beeswax, and something to cut the deerskin with. Now, the design of this is going to be a little bit trickier. You see, I don't actually know what this thing looks like. I don't think anyone does, as Peter Houston seems to be the only one that ever mentions it, and he mentions it almost in passing. So this is not designed to be an exact historical reproduction of something that we know a great detail about. This is more designed to be what I think that particular item would have looked like according to the rest of kind of what we know about Boone. Now, we clearly have 2 designs at play here. One implies some sort of a bag with a flap, perhaps even a strap to hang it from, something that would look like a modern-day messenger bag. And the other design implies a bag or a sack, perhaps even with a drawstring type closure. Now, I settled on the duffel style, and here's why. We know that Boone came from a Quaker background, and a lot of the descriptors of Boone implied that he wore plain clothing and was a fairly plain individual. There wasn't a lot of catchy bling in Boone's life or his world. And this deerskin bag, as simple as it would be and as utilitarian as it would be, seemed to be something that fit more his style. Now, coupled with that is the use of old flour and grain sacks, which are also effectively, large poke bags or even, small duffel bags, if you will. that were repurposed to carry other things, initially used to carry grain or wheat or flour or something like that, and then eventually cleaned and used for something else. Now, it's not surprising to me that this bag was made of deerskin. Boone himself is notorious for having deerskin items between moccasins and leggings and buckskin hunting shirt. Deerskin was obviously a material that Boone was comfortable with and knew enough about being able to reproduce it or to make it that it became a common item for him, or seemingly did so anyway. Now, Houston even talked about the tanning process that they used on the Kentucky frontier, and that was the alum tanning process. And this piqued my interest a little bit because I've read different store ledgers of frontier stores that were feeding the frontier, one of them being the McCorkle store. And one of the things that's being sold there is alum. All right, let's make this thing. This is the German tan deerskin that I'm going to use for this particular project. And it has a thicker section. This is either the neck or the rump, I can't tell. But it is a much thicker section of hide. And I don't want that at the top of the bag because it'll cause the top to collapse in on itself. So first I have to figure out how to configure this thing. And I think the way that we're going to have to do that is a way that makes the bag itself have one more seam. All right, it'd be nice if you could just fold it up and stitch up the sides and roll on about your life. But in this particular case, if I do that, the top, again, is going to be heavy on one side, light on the other side. I would rather have that heavier weight at the bottom of the bag where most of the weight would actually be. So I'm going to fold this thing in half and figure out where to cut the bottom, and then we'll trim up the sides and top. And all we'll have to do is stitch the 3 sides and then add a drawstring at the top. Now, what did Boone put in this bag? Well, Houston says that it's clothing, and that would be both Boone and Rebecca's, presumably. So we're going to see if we can fit some men's and women's clothing into this little bag, and if so, how much? All right, I've got some items here that we can try to stuff in there, or we can try to fit in there. I've got an extra men's shirt here, so we will start with that and get it folded up. rolled up a little bit. I have not tried any of this yet, so we're going to kind of see. Here's a petticoat here, a full adult-sized petticoat. We'll get that thrown in there. Here is an adult-sized women's bedgown here, so let's get it folded up and placed in. And then I've got a full-sized men's hunting shirt right here. And room for plenty more. I've got actually a set of moccasins here that I can put in there as well. I could easily fit in more leggings, another shirt. This little duffel bag right here is actually pretty handy. It holds a lot more even than I thought it would. There's plenty more room in here to put additional items. So I think we'll call this one a success here. And I wanted to mention too that the closure method that I designed, or implemented rather, is just going to be some simple scraps that I had of the deerskin when I cut up the side, and I added slots in here. And that idea actually comes from some of the, I think we call them now snap sacks at the time, but they were a long tubular type of bag. And the reproduction that I have, which is based on a British style, just has these basic slits in the top of the leather where you pull on the closure method. And this would also be strong enough and sturdy enough to hang from some protrusion on a pack saddle or something like that, and hanging off the side. And if you had another one on the other side that's of similar size, then of course you've got equal balance on the horse or the mule's back. Now, his account also emphasizes the use of the horse, so we've got to look at that aspect at least a little bit. Large wallets were very useful on horseback, as were some simple bag styles. But riding saddles at the time didn't have saddle horns like we know them today, but several saddle designs, including some pack saddles, had components that at least allowed the attachment of bags or canteens or anything else that you may want to try to hang off the side. So at the end of the day, this bag represents to me three symbolic meanings. The first is mobility and simplicity. The deerskin satchel was simple and portable, which seems to be two descriptors of Boone himself. Coming from a Quaker family, so the simplicity for this is right on brand if you think about it that way. And the second one is connection to the landscape. So if you think about it, the bag itself is made from the landscape itself, or at least an aspect of it. And I'm a firm believer in the theory that almost all of human history can be boiled down to an interaction between the culture and the landscape. And in this case, this bag is a direct representative of that interaction. And the last is the pioneer spirit. See, this bag screams to me, I don't have a lot, I don't want to carry a lot, and I know that I can get what I need when I need it, and I also know what I can get away with. Houston's memoirs are some of the best descriptors we have of Boone and his ways. He gives us glimpses of the everyday gear in Boone's world and little details that scratch my "how did he pull that off" itch. But for me, it was an invitation to look at this simplistic item and see kind of what it tells me about in terms of life and journey and decisions. You see, you can't stuff everything you own into one of these bags. So it got me thinking, what on earth would I leave behind today? What would I put in a bag this size, knowing that I was going to be gone for months and months, or perhaps not ever coming back to the place that I was leaving? So this deerskin bag is a micro-historical lens into at least one person's interface with cross-country movement. And I find myself once again humbled that someone so long ago, with much fewer possessions than I certainly have today in the 21st century, could fit something so valuable, in this case his family's wardrobe, into something that's smaller than a carry-on bag today. Now, I think I got about as much out of this one as I'm going to be able to get, this deep dive into this small account and reproducing what I think this bag would have looked like, and trying to get a better perspective on how this bag might be symbolic of a bigger, westward movement. I don't want to go too far into that into that briar patch, if you will, because I think it would be very easy to take too much out of it. At the end of the day, this is just a simple bag. But at the end of the day, too, it's an opportunity to exercise a little bit more historical interpretation into what my creative mind pictured this bag looking like. Now, I'd also like to know what you think the bag would have looked like, so please leave your description of the bag, if you will, or how you would make the bag in the comments section below, and why. Now, I appreciate you taking your time once again to spend with me, and if you like videos like this, please smash that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on the Deerskin Diary.